Welcome to the 4-H Horsemanship video series with Muffy Knox. Muffy is a well-known certified equine coach and was the Alberta 2004 Horseperson of the Year. She instructed the Western Coaching Program at Olds College for 15 years and has been working with the Calgary Stampede and the Calgary Board of Education to introduce inner-city students to the basics of horses through a program called Stampede School. A former school teacher who has ridden all of her life, she's combined her knowledge of horses with her talent of instructing youth to help develop a safety-oriented, building block-style progression of skills to enhance the development of horsemanship for both 4-H members and instructors. She continues to keep herself fully immersed in the industry with training, judging, and instructing. Alberta 4-H is grateful for Muffy Knox's involvement in the 4-H equine program and the many hours she's contributed to this video production.
This first section of our video is on groundwork, all the basics that are going to keep you safe and allow you to develop good horsemanship skills when working with a horse. If you want others to think of you as a good horse person, you will want to do a good job in the groundwork section. Catching the horse involves many safety factors. We never want to hear about anyone getting hurt while they're catching the horse, but unfortunately it does happen. First thing you want to do when you're going to catch your horse is make sure that you have your equipment ready before you get to the pen or the stall that the horse is in. So I'm going to use the halter to catch him, not the shank. So the shank is going to be further up my arm. Never wrap the shank around your arm, but you can put it over your wrist. Then you're going to hold the nose band of the halter in your left hand and the crown piece of your halter in that same hand with the end sticking up. This is going to make it much easier, especially if you're shorter and your horse is taller. So now that I've got my equipment ready, my job is to make sure that my horse knows that I'm coming into the stall or into the paddock that he's in. Never take for granted that your horse is looking at you. So you make a little noise, you can talk to him, and he's right at the gate here, so there's no doubt that he sees me. But never make that decision that he does know you're coming. Always make some noise and wait for him to acknowledge you. He's not going to stand and stare at you forever, and he might not even pick up his head, but he should give you an ear. He should point one ear at you to acknowledge that you're there. Once you're close enough to him, 10 feet away or so, and that'll happen as soon as I open this door, estimate what his body reaction is to you coming. If you see muscles tight, head up, eyes big, all of that tension indicates that he's not going to be easy to catch. So that's a good time to back off, not to go into his personal space. So we're going to give it a try now and see what happens. So I've made him aware that I'm there and he's picked up his head. When I open the door, it's really important that when I go in, I shut the door, because I don't want him to be rushing by me and trying to get out. I do leave it open just a crack, so if I do get into trouble and get knocked down, I can still get my hand in here and get the door open. So once we're within about 10 feet of the horse, again we assess his body language. We look to see, are his eyes huge? Are his muscles tense? Is his head up? If any of that happens, he's telling you he really doesn't want you to catch him. If he just kind of stands around or he moves to you, then he's okay with it. So you see this horse is tipping his head towards me, and pretty soon he's going to walk into my space. All right? If that's what he does, then I will approach him at the shoulder. Why at the shoulder? Because the horse's eyes are on the side of his head, so he sees best sideways. So this is the safest space for me to be in. Once the horse is calm and you've approached him, immediately put the crown piece under and reach over with your right hand and grasp it. And then if you just drop that halter, most horses will learn to put their nose into the nose hole. All right? Then you're going to hook up your halter. Don't leave it like that, because if you take him out and you tie him up, he can rub and undo that. So always do up your keepers. How do we know whether this halter fits him? Find the cheekbone on his face. So he's got a cheekbone on both sides. This is the one on this side. That top of that nylon noseband should be about 2 fingers below that cheekbone. It should be snug enough here that if he were to try to scratch his head with his hind foot, he can't get a foot in here, but it's loose enough that he can comfortably chew and drink. Same here. It's got to be tight enough so it's not going to go over his ears easily, but not so tight that you're going to restrict his airway. Once we have the halter on the horse, then we need to know a safe way to manage our shank. The big thing that we want to do is never wrap the shank around our hands or any part of our body. Our right hand will be holding the shank probably about 4 to 6 inches below the snap. If there's a chain, you never hang on to the chain. If we are small or very inexperienced, then the safest way is obviously to just loop your shank back and forth. Then it is also acceptable to hold it like this. Put the shank in your hand with the tail facing you. Make one loop. Now this is dangerous. If the horse pulls, you're going to lose all the skin off your hands. But if you take that shank and put it between these two fingers, if the horse should pull, your fingers are so sensitive in there, you're going to let go with that and still have this part. So this is also an acceptable way to hold the shank. When we're ready to leave the stall, we have to look at our horse's body language. Some days they're going to be very anxious about getting out because maybe their best friend has already left and they think they're late for something. So being careful not to let this horse get pushy and aggressive near the stall door or try to go out in front of you is really important. You have to make sure this horse is obedient at all times. So when I do approach the stall door, all of my shank is going to go into my right hand. I'm going to have a short hold on him, so if he goes to rush, I can bump him a little bit. I'll use my left hand to manage the door. So let's leave the stall now. Make sure you open the stall door wide enough so there's no chance of him catching his hip on the stall when he goes out. I'm going to come out just a little bit before him. It really is a good idea if you're in a barn area, when you do come out of your stall, if you shut your stall door. When we talk about leading the horse, the number one thing that we have to agree on is a definition of leading. So what is leading? All right, when we go like this and the horse follows behind calmly, to me that is not leading. You've taught the horse to follow. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with following. What I'm saying is there is a safety factor involved. When the horse is behind you, you cannot see his ear and eye reaction to any of his surroundings, so you don't know exactly what that horse is thinking about. You can't see that he's staring at something and maybe you should be preparing for a problem. So leading means you and the horse are walking side by side. The horse's eye and ear are ahead of you, so at all times, without staring at the horse, you can use your peripheral or sideways vision and you can see what it is he's looking at. That is your job if you are leading the horse, is to be aware all the time of what the horse is looking at. That's why when you're standing still with the horse, you never stand like this, because then the horse is not necessarily in your focus. So you always stand facing the horse so you can see everything around him and you can be more prepared if something goes wrong. Once I turn to face towards you, then the horse should be thinking that he should go forward. So here we go, and he's ready to go. So his ear and eye are ahead of me, and this is how we need to lead the horse so we can see what is going on. When we need to turn the horse, most of the time we will stop because that gives us a little bit more control, and 90% of the time we're going to turn that way, to the right, because less chance of him stepping on our feet. So when we turn him to the right, if you're in rider level 1 or 2 or maybe even 3, you just push that shank gently under his head and turn him around and take him away. All right, and I'll show you that again. He's going to turn and come toward you. Now, some horses aren't as soft as this and you have to put a little bit more effort into it. So now you have to start thinking about horses and how they communicate with other horses, because if we communicate with our horse like another horse does, they're going to understand us much better than if we communicate with him like he's a person. Most 4-H'ers who are having trouble with leading their horse and turning their horse want to push it and get strong. We don't see horses pushing other horses in the herd, but we do see them biting and kicking them. So by the time you are at rider level 4, then you need to be able to bite this horse a little bit, not with your teeth, but with your hand and your body language, be a little more assertive, and get this horse to start to move and turn by moving his shoulders, not just walking forward. So we're going to show you that. So I'm just going to bring him up and stop him. And now I'm not just going to push him over here. In fact, I'm going to put the shank in my left hand and I'm going to threaten him a little bit. Like, get over, get over, get over. Okay? So we want this horse to turn because I moved into his space, not because I pushed hard on the shank. And if he doesn't go, I give him a little hard, quick tap on the shoulder. You've seen other horses in the herd do that, where they bite and the horse moves out of that space. Well, if you talk to your horse in that same language, he will definitely understand it. Now, what do you do when things go wrong? What happens if all of a sudden now he gets distracted by something way over there and you can see his attention is on something way over there? How do I know that? Because that's where his ears are. Wherever a horse's ears are looking, that's what his brain is on. So what if he decides right now to take off and drag me? I can't turn him to the right. I can't get in front of him or he's going to run me over. So that's when we use our emergency stop. So now it's absolutely crucial that you don't have this shank tied around your hand or tangled around your hand in any way. So go back to that figure 8 loop. You can hang on to either the shank or the halter and pull his head towards you, all right? And you're gonna put your hand on his ribs and push him around. So if he's being nasty and I've lost his attention, so his ears aren't on me at all, I can regain both physical control, so he's not dragging me up this roadway, and I can regain mental control by just pushing him around in a circle until his ears are focused more on me than on whatever it is that's distracting him. So I'm going to show you that. It's very hard to demonstrate this when the horse is not spooked because you haven't got the impulsion to move forward. But if they're spooked and they're dragging you, you won't have trouble to get them to go forward. So I'm going to pull with my left hand, pull his head towards me, put my right hand on his ribs, and just push him around. So the reason your right hand is on his ribs is so that he can't step on you. So you're actually pushing him away and pulling him around until those ears start looking at you more than at whatever it was he was looking at. Sometimes young members have trouble getting their horse to start. If that happens, that's when the instructor and the whip come into play. The whip is never used aggressively. All the instructor does is walk alongside the 4-H'er, and when they're ready to trot, the instructor extends the arm back until the horse is trotting. Another aspect of horse handling that 4-H'ers can work on at home and with the help of their parents is just basic obedience and creating a horse that it's nice to be around. One that's not pushing you around, pulling you around, rubbing you with his head, and doing all those things that most of us dislike. So, one thing that you can do is teach your horse to stand still. If you're going to go on and go to your achievement day and do showmanship, your horse must know how to stand still. So, when I go to his shoulder, I should be able to back away, and he should be able to stay right where he is without me pulling on the shank. I'll go back to the shoulder because that's the comfort space, give him a pat, and then I should be able to go straight out in front of him, and he should also stay still. So right now you see he's distracted a little bit, so I'm going to bring his attention back to me. Whoa. And if he should move like that, you back him up right away, okay? And let him know that that was a mistake. Whoa. Notice his ears now. He's thinking a little bit rather than just gawking out the door. Whoa. And he moved again. So I'll move him back again. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay, whoa. So notice I never tighten the shank on him. I just push him back and ask him to stay there. So he should be able to stand still, whether I'm at 12 o'clock, which is right where I am now. 3 o'clock would be on the left side. 9 o'clock is back here. And I should even be able to go towards his back end. And he should not move. So this is a big part of it. What's the correction? Every time he moves forward, you back him up. We often notice that many 4-H'ers have trouble backing their horses. One reason for that is it's not a natural gait. We don't see horses backing across the field. So we have to take the time to teach them how to back and not just back them when we need to back. So how do we do that? First thing that you can do is lead them up to something that they wouldn't normally want to lead up to. So even if you don't get them all the way up to it, get them up to where they're uncomfortable, kind of staring at it with their eyes and their ears, maybe blowing and smelling it a little bit. And that's the perfect opportunity to ask them to back up, because that's exactly what they want to do. So I'm not going to back from this side. I'm going to go around to the left side. We just about always back from the left side. My hold with my right hand is going to be very close to the snap. And I'm just going to push a little so that this nose band puts pressure on his nose. That is not my number one aid. My number one aid is me, body language. I am going to straighten my shoulders, look at this horse a little bit, like I am going to be a little bit assertive, like I might give him a bite, and try to encourage him to move out of my space. So often when kids are backing, they're looking at the ground or looking at their feet, so you're not giving the horse any kind of indication that they should move out of your space. So let's give it a try. So first thing that I'm going to do is move him up to a solid wall. And if he doesn't want to be at this wall, then I turn and face him and softly ask with the shank. Now a horse that doesn't know how to back isn't going to back that readily off just a nice little soft touch. So I brought my biter with me. So I'm going to ask him softly with the shank, and if he doesn't, I'll just poke him with the whip, or I can give him a little tap with the whip. I really try not to get really strong on his nose band. I want him to respond with very light contact to that shank. Very light contact to the pressure on his nose. So he needs to realize when I stop and face him, one of two things is going to happen. Either we're going to stop or we're going to back up. And see, he's thinking back up already now because we've done it a few times, and that's exactly what we want to happen. Once we are able to comfortably back our horses up, then we're ready for the challenge of teaching our horses to stand square. Why would we want to do that? Not just because we're going to do showmanship, but another important reason is if someone wants to analyze this horse's conformation, such as the vet or the farrier, it's also a basic part of obedience. So once he will back comfortably, then you can do that pull me, push me exercise. So I can pull him forward a step, and he's in lock, and I'll just unlock him, and I can back him up again. And I can move him forward, and I can back him up again. Notice what I'm doing. I'm rocking back because I don't want to stand right up there and expect him to move into my space, because he's already been taught that he shouldn't move into my space. Once we can rock him, then we're ready to try and square him up. Today I'm using a horse that does not know how to square up, because I know you've all seen plenty of horses that square up immediately, and sometimes if they do it so well right off, it's hard for you to see how to do it. What I do is I get a wall behind my horses so they can't back up forever, and then I just move them forward and back. So I choose a hind foot. So we always start with the hind feet. So I've chosen the foot that's the darkest, which is the left hind foot, and I've placed it where I wanted it to be placed. Now my job is to move the white hind foot back beside it. So again, I want to stay out of his space, about an arm's length away, and I'm just going to push back lightly. All right, and I told you he doesn't know how to stand up, So that was just kind of good luck that he put his foot there. Now notice he's resting his other foot, and I know this gives a lot of you a lot of grief. How can you get this horse to put weight on that foot? Well, an easy way to do it, if he's not understanding very well, is just to irritate his front feet. So if I just pretend I'm going to pick it up, then he will put weight on his back foot because he thinks I'm going to do it. After he understands that, then I can easily just move my foot towards his foot, and he will think I'm going to ask him to move this white leg, and he will put weight on that back leg. So whichever back leg he is resting, we irritate the front leg that is immediately in front of it. So my goal at this stage is not to have him do it perfectly, but to make an effort to put his feet where I want them to be. And when he's close, I leave him alone. My goal is not to get into conflict with him where he's worried that he's going to get in trouble and he's bouncing around. So we want to keep this whole process quiet and soft.
Another aspect of horse handling on the ground is knowing where to stand when someone's looking at your horse. When I show you this, you're going to say, well, that's the same thing they want us to do in showmanship. Yes, exactly. And the reason that they want you to do that is exactly for safety. As you notice on the ground, we have several whips. One is going between his front legs and hind legs, and the second one is right behind his front legs. That divides the horse into 4 quadrants. And this is what we use as a guideline to know when to move. So here we have an observer coming, maybe it's a vet, maybe it's the farrier that wants to look at our horse. If she's on that side of the horse, I need to be on this side and far enough away from the horse that I can see all of her and all of him. If I snuggle up here, all I can see is his lovely ear and neck and mane. So we actually move out a little bit more to the front side. All right? As soon as she moves, I need to move as well. So as soon as she goes past that whip, I need to go on this side. And there's a very important reason for this. If this horse is going to kick her, then all I need to do is back up and pull his head this way, and his hip will go the other way, and he can't kick her. So this is why we stand here. Sometimes observers, if they're observing conformation, will stand directly behind the horse. If they choose to do that, we stay on the same side. We don't move from where we were. We might move a little further away from the horse so we can see all of them and all of the horse. As soon as they commit themselves and both feet go on that side of the line, we go over there as well for the same reason. If I was to stay over here and she stays over there, I could spook the horse on top of her, or she can spook the horse on top of me. So it's important that we're both on the same side if the observer is at the back of the horse. As soon as she comes up into this front quadrant, I need to go back on the other side so I'm not blocking her view of the horse, and so that I can control him and back him up if things go wrong. Again, if she chooses to stand directly in front of him to look at his legs, then I don't change sides. I just move a little bit more this way. So again, I can easily turn my neck and see all of him, anything that's coming around him that might spook him, and I can see her as well. If you choose to learn this and then go on and do showmanship, all you need to do is spiffy him up a little bit the way he's standing, pick his head up a little bit, and be a little bit more finesseful in your footwork.
We need at this time to talk about the safety aspects of using a shank with a chain on it. There's no problem of using such, but the safety aspect must be covered. If this horse were to pull or jerk or rear right now and I chose to move my hand up here to control her, I could severely injure my hand. So if you are going to use a shank with a chain on it at any time, and you're not going to use the chain under the jaw, then we need to show you how to attach that. First of all, you are going to take the shank and take the snap and run it right through the ring. After it is through the ring, you're going to take the snap and run it back through this little loop right here. Once it's through there, you then hook it back on to that original ring. So now your shank is 3-ply. I can hold here, which is the correct length for me to be holding away from the halter, and if we get into trouble, I'm not going to injure my hand. Another aspect that we often get questions about is, what if I want to use the chain under my horse's jaw, which is often done in showmanship? There is a correct way to attach it. So we take the snap, we run it through the cheek ring on the side that you're on, which is the left side. It does not go through the bottom ring at all. It then goes over to this side and again goes through the cheek ring. And it attaches on up here. So we now have the shank attached correctly. Cheek ring on the left, cheek ring on the right, and up to the temple ring. That's where it should be attached. Depending on the length of your chain, sometimes even the distance from the end of the leather here up to the halter is still too long. If that's the case, then don't hesitate to adjust it on the other side. If you were going to the World Show, you would actually have a chain, you'd have somebody take some links out of it so it fit perfectly. But for our purposes, we can go over here, loosen this chain, take the snap, run it through the ring, and hook it back on itself. If the chain was extremely long, I could hook the snap back on this ring again. So this would be an appropriate adjustment for right now. Then if I go back on this side, you can see